Right, without further ado, we will start. The meeting is recording this week, I've checked. That's awesome. So we're talking today about a new book, or a new book to our little group anyway, to talk about, and that's Atomic Habits, dun dun dun, by James Clear. Did you guys manage to get a copy of it?
No, I listened to it.
Listened? Stan?
I've got an electronic copy.
Okay, cool. So I thought it made sense when I looked at the book, which I put in the Facebook page the other day, that we cover the first 3 chapters, because that is the section of the fundamentals.
I only listened to the first 2.
That's okay. That's probably my fault for not reaffirming that point, but it's fine, because it actually flows on quite nicely, and we'll talk about it anyway, and you can catch that up.
Yeah.
So the introduction on the book, to start with, I'll just run through what I picked out as sort of the key points, as I usually do, and then you guys by all means chime in with whatever, if there's anything that stood out to you differently, or anything that you've thought of as a result of reading that, or anything that you've been able to implement or you've struggled with. We'll go through all those different sort of aspects of it. For me, his introductory story is really all about how James Clear became an expert on habits. Really, he's now noted as an authority on the subject, and has got a massive following online. He's produced a lot of videos that I think have gone viral, and this was a bestseller. So it says even on the copy that I've got here, over 1 million copies sold. 1 million copies of a book is quite substantial, and I'm sure it's a lot more than that now. Then there's all the audio books as well, of course, which I don't know if that comes into that figure or not, but it's been massively well received because it's well documented, it's well researched, and he's a good storyteller, and he's very easy to listen to, as you probably found on the audio books. He's got a good speaking voice, and he comes across very well. So his introductory story, which is quite horrific really, is the story of the baseball accident, where he gets his face all smashed up with a baseball, and he's in a coma, and flown to hospital, and his parents are there, and they're reading him the last rites even. And then he had a long, tortuous comeback from that, where as a youngster his passion was playing baseball, and he couldn't play it because his face was messed up, his vision was blurred for a long period of time, and it put him right behind, and really kind of destroyed his aspirations to go on and potentially be a professional baseball player. But as with all adversity, something good comes out of potentially what we could label as bad. So how this book will benefit you, and I love this quote. The entrepreneur and investor Naval Ravikant has said, "To write a great book, you must first become the book." So his experience is very much shaped why he became an expert on change, because he had to go through a long and tortuous process to deal with these injuries, and he recognized in the process of doing that, he recognized that he could break it down into a process of what he went through to affect the changes that he wanted to make in his life. And so what might come easily to a lot of people, he had to actually discipline himself to put into place habits that would lead to the successful outcomes that he wanted. And in doing so, realize that that's the formula, that's how we do it. So he gave some great examples in chapter 1, the surprising power of atomic habits. Talked about the Olympic cycling team, the British cycling team, and that what this coach who came in Brailsford, who put the British cycling team on the map, was his relentless commitment to a strategy that he referred to as the aggregation of marginal gains, or the philosophy of searching for a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. Tony Robbins talked about constant and never-ending improvement. It's the little changes that over time added together make a big difference. And he gives a number of examples through through the book here, that we tend to easily focus on overestimating the importance of a defining moment. You know, most speakers talk about a defining moment where everything changed for them, and there is definitely an indication that, like Tony Robbins talks about, that moment of decision when you decide enough's enough, things need to change. But that's only the starting point of it. What then follows is the process that's required to effect that change. So the change can be a big turning point, but we tend to focus on that turning point. What made you suddenly become the superstar or the overnight success? Nobody ever becomes an overnight success. They've had to put themselves in a position where they are able to receive the success. So he talks about how tiny improvement, if you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. That's interesting maths, isn't it?
It is.
So, oh, I've got Jane joining us. I'll just admit her into the call. So yes, we know that now he's setting up the stage to talk about how, and I love this quote. Hello, Jane. Welcome aboard. Good to have you.
Hello, everybody.
So we're just talking about James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and we're into chapter 1. So we're talking about the surprising power of atomic habits. And I love this quote: habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. That really nails it for me, that we know how compound interest works, that if you want to make money over a long period of time and you invest, the longer you've got for that money to compound, the more exponentially your investment is going to grow. But when you first start, it seems like you're getting nowhere. You know, you're putting away a few dollars and your bank account doesn't grow very much at all, and you're thinking, is this ever gonna, is it gonna be worth it? And most people probably cash it in and spend it on something trivial rather than sticking to the discipline of their long-term plan. So the same happens with us in life. We might want to make changes, and I love this example. So if you go to the gym 3 days in a row, you're still out of shape. You don't go to the gym and suddenly become Mr. Muscle, or you know, you don't suddenly lose that midlife bit of cushioning that we've got there. You know, it doesn't just drop off. You have to commit to it. That if you want to go on change your diet, you don't just eat healthily for a day and suddenly you've lost all the weight that you want to lose. If only it did work like that. If you just take a pill and it all just dropped off, wouldn't that be awesome? It doesn't work like that. So the old analogy here that he brings in, of course, is about the aircraft. You know, if you change the angle of the nose of the aircraft by just a little bit over the time it takes to fly across the Atlantic, for example, you could be a very long way off course. If you're out by 1 degree, by the time you get the other side of the pond, you're a long way off where you intended to be. So life is like that too. The small change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very different destination. So he talks about how your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habits. And your clutter is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. That one struck a chord with me if you look at my desk. But anyway, you get what you need. But then I've also read that having a disorganized desk is a sign of a great mind. So I'll stick with that one. Thank you. So, are you reading books and learning something new each day? Yes, we are. Here we are doing it. Are you spending less than you earn each month? Well, are you making it to the gym each week? No, I don't go to the gym anymore because I realize that that's just not me. I prefer to play team sports. So I'm committed to playing beach volleyball, which gets me doing aerobic movement a couple of times a week with people in their 20s. And then I'm working physically hard as well, so that's helping a lot too. So he talks about, to summarize chapter 1, he talks about how your habits can compound for you or against you, you know, with your productivity, with your knowledge, with your relationships. You know, if you're consistently working on your relationship, being nice to your partner, being supportive, being loving, doing all the right, saying the right things, being the right person, over time that builds trust, builds a relationship. But if you're constantly nagging and sniping and whinging and carrying on, what happens over time? That relationship declines. So it's the same. You know, I love this. This really sums it up. Is the example of the ice. A 1 degree shift, and suddenly the ice starts to melt. So it's a critical threshold that unlocks a new level of performance. And in the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often a valley of disappointment. Who's experienced a valley of disappointment? Who hasn't? Haven't we all? And so I love this. We fail to see a tangible result, so we stop. We quit on things. You know, we give up. People persist long enough to break through that plateau, what he calls the plateau of latent potential. And when you do, the observers will say, "You're an overnight success." So you think about anyone who's achieved it, the Olympic athlete that gets the gold medal, they didn't just suddenly go for a run and become a gold medalist. You know, they've had to get up every morning and go out and, like you've all seen the Rocky movie, haven't you? Where he's up at 4 o'clock in the morning eating raw eggs and running through the streets of Philadelphia, and culminating in the running up the library steps, I think it is, isn't it? The library. You know, that he keeps doing it day after day after day, and eventually he's super fit. He didn't just become super fit overnight. I love this quote: "Change can take years before it happens all at once." So mastery requires patience, and all things come from small beginnings. Trees don't just suddenly become a tree. They start off, you know, the oak starts from an acorn and gradually grows over time. Watching a house get built, there's an interesting one. You know, they go through those different stages where suddenly, like, the block's laid, and well, for ages it seems like there's nothing happening. Then all of a sudden, when the block goes down, quickly the walls go up. You think, oh, it's really happening now. It's really going very fast. And then it slows down again, waiting for the different tradies to come in and do the work. But then the roof goes on and it seems to be really moving along. It's funny how, you know, get these different stages. Everything's just moving as it should. So goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So what he's really saying is we focus on the system rather than on the result. Now that's an interesting twist, because most self-improvement books traditionally have taught we've all got to have a goal. What's your goal? You know, what's your big dream? We've got to talk about the big dream. How much money do you want to earn? Oh, you want to earn $1 million? Let's write down that's your goal. You're going to earn $1 million. Now, the interesting thing about James Clear and how he approaches things is your beliefs are really, we'll come to this in chapter 3 in a big way, but beliefs are really tied to your identity. And there's a loop. So your beliefs form your identity repeat your beliefs. They magnify your beliefs, reinforce them. So if you start off believing that you can do something, and then you form the habit that it requires to do it, you improve your belief that you can do it. It's just a continuous loop. I do it, I believe I can do it, I follow the system. I'm even more in believing that I can do it. When you don't follow the system and you quit, then you're not going to believe it, are you? So achieving a goal, though, only changes your life for the moment. And that's why a lot of people have a goal, let's say, for instance, weight loss. They lose the weight, but they haven't changed the thinking around it. If you still see yourself as an overweight person, or, you know, you don't see yourself as a healthy eater, you go back. If you want to give up smoking and you see yourself as a smoker who's quitting, when you quit for a while, you're still a smoker who's quit for a while. So as soon as the opportunity arises, you go back, and then, oh, well, of course I went back. I'm a smoker. But if you see yourself as a non-smoker doesn't smoke. So when you're offered a cigarette, you refuse it because you're a non-smoker. So changing the belief is the biggest thing.
Isn't it interesting that Alcoholics Anonymous says, of course, one day at a time, but that everyone who stands up will say, I'm an alcoholic. It could very possibly be months or years since you've had a drink, and that you've been sober for a very long time. But it's the alcoholic thinking, the alcoholic personality, the alcoholic belief system.
That's a really interesting observation, Jane. I
Mm.
think about that one.
Go pick up your beer.
Water in it. Water, not vodka, I promise. I'm not an alcoholic.
Me neither.
Or am I just deluding myself?
Oh,
He would give up wine, but he's no quitter.
Thanks, Stan. Stan gets it. So yes, that's a really interesting point. We'll come back to that in a moment. Just to finish off this chapter, he says, goals create an either-or conflict. Either you achieve your goal and you're successful, or you'll fail and you're a disappointment. Haven't we all failed at setting a goal? A New Year's resolution, perhaps. I've set goals like going to the gym, and he talks about this somewhere in the book. I can't remember now, but you might go to the gym for a few days, but if you haven't changed the identity of who you are, you become the kind of person who consistently goes to the gym, then you will not continue with it. And that was, I realized, and particularly when I listened to Mel Robbins' book about, what was it called? The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 book. I can't remember what it's called now, what the title was. You realize that if you're actually honest with yourself, I'm not going to be that person who goes to the gym every day because I find it boring. But give me a team sport where there's a ball to chase, like soccer or beach volleyball, and I'm in. And that's because there's also the team environment. There's you don't want to let the team down. You've got the competition involved. That's much more interesting to me. So I'll play that sport and I'll get fit that way. But standing in a gym, pumping weights or being on a treadmill just doesn't appeal to me. And some people love it, and that's great for them. But realizing that, Mel Robbins went through that, where she went, could I actually be that person that's going to do what it takes to become that super fit person with a flat stomach and be there every day doing that in the gym? No, I won't. So why kid myself? So you look for being honest with yourself, looking for solutions that are actually going to work, and then committing to the system that it takes to follow that. Whereas I can say, yes, I am a reader. I don't just read books. I am a reader. That's part of my identity. And that's why I persist with, and as you see behind me, I have a huge collection of books. And my wife has said to me in the past, how many books do you need? But now she gets it. She's become a reader as well. It's quite interesting seeing that development happening, because she's getting all excited about the same authors that I've been reading. So a systems first mentality provides the antidote. And he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you haven't put a system in place, then you're not supporting yourself in achieving the goal. I know that's kind of fairly obvious, but I just love the way he simplifies it down. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really interesting point that you've raised there, Jane. Why do Alcoholics Anonymous work that way when they're not really reinforcing a behavior, an identity change, are they? They're actually locking that person into saying, I'm an alcoholic my whole life, I just have to manage it. Now, is that because it's an actual disease? or is it not really addressing the issue? Would James Clear have a different outlook on that? I'd be interested to find out. Actually, you really intrigued me with that one.
Yeah, no, and as soon as you said, I'm not a smoker, those words, it's like, oh, gee, what? I don't know. I just went to people that go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I thought, well, is that, I don't know. That almost seems like it's enabling their weakness.
Yeah. But they are, yeah, go on.
They don't aim to like become a social drinker like you don't with a smoker either. You're like finished with that. Whereas if you're looking at it from being a social drinker and you know you're feeling pretty fine with the amount you drink, it's quite a different scenario.
That's a really good point, Coralie. I think that's the key difference is that the alcoholic can't stop. Once they start drinking, they can't stop. Where they don't have that switch that most of us have where you can go, yes, I'll have a drink, or no, I've had enough, or I don't need to carry on drinking. I think that's the key difference, that they've got something missing that enables them to press the stop button.
And the other thing, though, that I found it interesting that I heard years ago through AA was that they would say you could drink once a year and still be an alcoholic. Because the whole idea is that if you drink to change your state of being, then the Alcoholics Anonymous considers you an alcoholic.
Oh, that's
Whoa! Whoa!
I really like it.
So why do we drink?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we like the way it feels.
We like but also I think with wine, I like there's the whole thing about matching your wine with your food. Certain wines do enhance the taste of the food, and vice versa. The taste enhances the food enhances the wine. So they do complement each other, and that's a balanced decision where you can have that drink with that food. You're not doing it because I want to get absolutely smashed. Well, you might be. Some people do, but they can get up the next day and not drink the next day. The alcoholic probably can't stop.
And it's sort of like, you know, like an alcoholic might have a bottle of vodka under the bed, but a not alcoholic, well, but then that's just my interpretation because I don't think I am an alcoholic, but we've got a very well-stocked bar, but we don't, you know, we only drink when people come over mostly.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I could argue that my wife is a functioning alcoholic because we always have wine in the house, but and she will drink a bottle of it. We've got a friend actually who says she has no stop button, and yet she's gone months without drinking. But then she'll go back to drinking again, and she used to drink, you know, go on to the second bottle and then probably the third because she'd just stay up all night drinking, you know. My wife can drink a couple of bottles of wine, but she can switch then to becoming a different person. That's not necessarily a person you want to hang around when she gets like that. And I know she won't mind me saying that because she knows that in herself. But whereas if you're just going out on a wine tour for the day, for example, you can have a really nice day out. It doesn't mean you then got to completely continue on all night and get absolutely hammered.
No.
So I think the fact that you have the choice, that you can make the choice, is you enjoy a drink, but you don't need the drink. There's another element with alcoholism, and that is that the reason they drink is out of self-loathing, that it's actually a sort of a self-destruct path that is so there's a belief there that I'm not a good enough person, or I'm not a nice person, and so the drink is kind of a way of punishing themselves for not being that nice person. There's a lot of psychology around that, but I think that's a really intriguing point that you've raised there, and I'd be interested to see what James Clear has to say about that. I might even follow it up.
Yeah, really. Oh, let us know.
You can contact him. So through his website. So I'm going to ask the question. Maybe it comes up later in the book. I can't remember, but I have read the book several times. Listen, as you probably have, I've listened to it on audio quite a lot. Particularly when I was cleaning, I must have listened to this book about 6 or 7 times. And yet, you know what? I'm still going back and picking out key points. It's like maybe sometimes it takes repetition for me to get it to really sink in, or it resonates with me differently each time I read it. So that was chapter 1, was really explaining the surprising power of atomic habits, about the compounding effect, and how a small change can seem to make no difference until you cross that critical threshold, and then suddenly it does make a big difference. And so life, if you looked at it as on a diagram, it's not a straight line, you know, from 0 to success up there. It's more of a J curve. So we might appear for a long time to not be getting anywhere, and then suddenly the results of your work start to come in. And so he used that analogy in nature really well. Talked about bamboo somewhere in the recording. Cancers, even, you know, on the negative side, that it can be dormant or seem to be dormant in your systems, and gradually it's building itself, and then suddenly you see people deteriorate in a matter of months. So it can work for you, or it can work against you, and it's part of a larger system. So really, I think this is a clinching sentence here. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on your system instead. I slightly disagree with that, and it's important to have the goal or the vision of where you want to go. But what he's saying is, rather than just focusing on that goal, like I'm going to lose 10 kilos by this date or whatever, that locks you into a black or white issue. It locks you into either I've achieved it and I've succeeded, or I haven't achieved it and I failed. Mm. And that's the point that he's making, is there's a difference, is that as long as I'm following the path, it'll take care of itself. So chapter 2 goes on to how your habits shape your identity and vice versa, which we touched on there. Unhealthy habits like eating junk food, watching too much television, procrastinating, and smoking can feel impossible to break. So we're trying to change the wrong thing, and we're trying to change it the wrong way. And he says habits like exercise, meditation, journaling, and cooking are reasonable for a day or two and then become a hassle. Who's experienced that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 layers of behavior change: outcomes, processes, and identity. So he says that most people begin their process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. That's what we've all been taught, isn't it? Focus on what you want to achieve. This leads us to outcome-based habits. The alternative is to build identity-based habits. So with this approach, we start by focusing on who we wish to become, which really does challenge that, what you're saying, Jane, the alcoholic. Why would you not approach this on the basis of, I'm a non-drinker? Mm-hmm. Well, there's as we said, there might be other reasons behind that, to do with the psychology of it and the addictive nature of it. But then nicotine's addictive, isn't it? So if you can use it as a smoker, then what's the difference? So behind every system of actions are a system of beliefs. Behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. So if you set a goal to build a successful business, for example, but you don't see yourself as the kind of person who can build a successful business, then unless something changes around that identity, you won't succeed. However, there is that thing of, you climb one peak and then you can see the next peak. So do you have to make that massive leap? So this is where what he's saying, like, say for instance, you set yourself the goal, I'm going to be a multi-millionaire. No, I'm going to be a billionaire. Let's go for it. I'm going to be a billionaire. Why not? Do you see yourself as a billionaire? Probably not. So the identity is conflicting straight away with the goal. But could you see yourself as a person who could double your income? You know, let's say you earn 100,000 a year. Could you make 200,000 a year? Is that possible? Well, you'd have to see yourself able to do that first to have any chance of becoming a billionaire, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is it's a series of steps. So you might aspire to get in the local school team, the local basketball team. Let's take this as an example. You might have a dream to one day play NBA, you know, be a professional. But let's start with getting in the school team. Because if you can't get in the school team, you're never going to get to be a professional, are you? So you chunk it down.
Mm.
So the danger, like you said, is if you set up the goal as I'm going to be the billionaire, and you fail, well, you've just failed. You weren't a billionaire. You focused on that goal. But if you focus on a person who's capable of earning more money each day, and you focus on that system, how can I earn more money each day? How can I get fitter each day? How can I read more each day? And then he goes on to talk about how your identity is the key thing. So the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants this. It's something very different to say, I am the type of person who is this.
Can you say that again?
So it's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants this.
Oh.
It's something very different to say, I'm the type of person who is this.
Right.
So, as an example, I play guitar. I'm not Jimi Hendrix, or, you know, I'm not of that ilk. I'm not a professional musician. I'm an amateur musician, but I am a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I want to be a better musician, I need to focus on, well, first of all, believe that I am a musician, which I do believe because I can play the guitar and I can sing. But if I want to be a better musician, then I need to form the habit of playing more consistently, practicing every day, learning something new. But if I didn't believe I was a musician, if I was just someone who owned a guitar, then I would struggle, wouldn't I? But I know I can get up and play a song. So what he says then, and I think this is a crucial one too. This hammered home to me. The more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it. So linking it to being proud of being that thing. So I'm proud that I can play the guitar because most people probably can't. And I've had to work at it. I didn't just, you know, if you'd have heard me when I first started, you'd have run away. And this was an experience I had when I was running my backpackers, because there was people coming in with guitars all the time. And you'd hear a new person just starting out playing guitar, making horrible noises, and they couldn't hold a chord. They couldn't keep their fingers pressed down, and they'd try and play something that sounded terrible. And I thought, that was me when I started. But then if I got a bit cocky and thought, I'm actually quite good, then someone else would come in that just blow me away, that could play like, you know, there's no way I could ever play like that. So it's all, the key is not about comparing yourself to other people. It's about comparing yourself with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Am I better today than I was yesterday? And can I be better tomorrow than I am today? So what do I need to do? I need to follow a system. I need to practice. I need to develop, hone my craft, work on my skills, work on my knowledge, put it into practice. So if you're going to attach pride to it, it becomes, to be proud of something, it has to be part of your identity, doesn't it? So this could be a really good key. So he says, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. So if you got up every day and went out for a run, and you did that consistently, after a while, there would come a tipping point you know, Malcolm Gladwell wrote this book, The Tipping Point, and in that he talked about the 10,000 hour principle. Yanni's joining us. When you do something for 10,000 hours, that was his sort of defining tipping point, is that you then become an expert at it. But it becomes a part of your identity. That's who you are. So if you went running every day, presumably after about 10,000 hours of running, you would see yourself as a runner. If anyone said, so tell me about yourself. Most of the time, that when you ask, so you meet someone at a party or something, you ask them, what do you do? How many of us associate what we do with our identity? And this is why so many people struggle with things like redundancies or, you know, business failures, is that you've become your business. It's an extension of you. So if it's suddenly taken away from you, who are you? I had a very interesting chat with a friend who was struggling with religion because her parents were staunch Catholic. She'd been brought up a Catholic, and she's married a guy who's not religious at all and used to take the mickey out of her for her religious beliefs. And over time, she has become, she still believes, but she is a non-practicing Catholic. And then that started over time to sort of, do I really believe or don't I? And I sat down with her and had this long conversation where she was really quite conflicted, because what I realized was what she was asking herself was, if I'm not a Catholic, then what am I? Who am I? And so that was part of who she was. And this is not about religion. This is just an example. So, and you know, whatever anyone believes, it's entirely up to them. But if it becomes who you are, we make those statements. So, and one of the sort of dangerous ones in a way is that we introduce ourselves with what we do for a living. That's not who you are. Wayne Dyer talks about this quite a lot. You know, if you have to describe yourself, you're not allowed to mention what you do. It can become a little bit challenging sometimes.
That's a what they call Toastmasters. One of the very first assignments in Toastmasters is to do that.
Really?
And I have an answer for you, Jane, about Alcoholics Anonymous. The reason they say they're an alcoholic is because it's cognitive behavior therapy. So first of all, you are now aware that you have a problem, and then you deal with it in the 12 steps.
Right.
It's actually got a lot of psychology behind it.
The point that Jane was making, I think, if I may speak, is that at the end of the 12 steps, you don't go, now I'm no longer an alcoholic.
Yeah, but so what they're saying is there's no cure for alcoholism. So when you get into the meeting, you need to acknowledge that you are an alcoholic and you still have a problem. Then you deal with it by doing your 12 steps, like facing your fears and getting over stuff and what triggers you and all sorts of stuff. So it's interesting. It is definitely an interesting take on it. You know, like you could go, well, why don't they say, hey, I'm a non-drinker, and and then follow their same steps. But yeah.
Just like to acknowledge that Yanni's joined us on the call. Welcome, Yanni.
Hey, Yanni.
I see you're with us.
Thank you.
Are you driving or something? Are you unable to speak?
Yes, you know, I'm always on the road around this time.
That's all right. Stay safe. Don't worry. We know you're with us in spirit. That's fine. So, as we said, the goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. So our association with our identity is the critical element here. If we believe we are the kind of person who is a musician, or we are the kind of person who is a reader or a runner, we do what it takes to become that person. We can only say I'm a musician if I actually play some kind of instrument or I sing. We can't say I'm a musician and then not do anything about it. And so I love that element of, if you look, is there pride there? Is there an attachment to that emotionally? And that's the thing my wife Jo's dealing with a lot of people who are wanting to lose weight is that they've got an emotional attachment to food. They're using it as a crutch. So someone who's considerably overweight, in some way they're getting some emotional benefit from that, whether it's their suit of armor to protect them from the outside world, from issues that they've had, or abuse, or all sorts of things, or whether even I remember hearing about one lady who used the fact that she was very large to get the best seats in the restaurant and so on, because she said, oh no, I can't sit there because I'm too big, I've got to sit here. And so in some ways it was working for her to maintain that image. So it's interesting when you look at your behavior and your identity, and so you can quite clearly see when they're not aligned. But when they are aligned, you're acting like the type of person that you already believe yourself to be. So when Richard Branson sees something like we're all going to be able to be an astronaut, and I see us all being able to fly into space, and he's already seen that in his mind, and he believes he's the kind of person who can pull that off. And so he goes and does it. But he wasn't always like that. He had to start off with believing that he could sell Christmas trees from a phone box, which he did. So it's about establishing that identity and believing in it. So this is something I do a lot of work with as a coach. I pick up on when people make these statements, and it usually starts with I am. I'm terrible with directions. I'm not a morning person. I'm bad at remembering people's names. How many times do you hear that one?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always late. I'm not good with technology. I'm horrible at maths. How many times we catch ourselves once we start reading these books and so on, we become aware when we're doing it. And I'm not saying I don't do it. I catch myself doing it sometimes, but it's very easy as a coach to see other people doing it or hear them saying it. And I'll pick them up on it and go, hold on a minute. You know, I have even playing beach volleyball. I go, oh, my serving's terrible tonight. I'm no good at serving. And I go, hang on a minute. Are you going to carry on telling yourself that? Because guess what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to keep on serving badly all night.
Mm-hmm.
So if you change it and you go, I wasn't serving well, but now I'm going to be. I used to not be very good at remembering people's names, but now I'm putting a focus on it, making a conscious effort to improve that, aren't I, Cedric? I mean, Stan.
Ah!
So if we believe that we are no good at remembering names, what do you think was going to happen? We're never going to remember anyone's name, are we? Because we've got that belief that we just can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
That just don't stick for me. So you need to change who you think you are and act in accordance with that person. So if you instead said, I didn't used to be good at remembering people's names, that's being truthful, acknowledging the past shortcoming, if you like, but then going, but I'm working on that, and now I'm becoming very good at remembering people's names. And then you start to find, how can I remember people's names? There's a system for doing it. And one of the things I used at the Backpackers was, because I had to remember 60 guests' names that were coming and going at different times. So I would associate them with something. I would look at the person, where they were from. Oh, you know, that's Coralie from New Zealand. Oh, that's Jane from New York. So I would look for things, and maybe groups of people together. I could remember one name. That would trigger me to be able to remember the other 4 people they were traveling with. And another like there's lots of techniques about that, but you know, repeating somebody's name as you're speaking to them. So you would go, oh, so your name's Jane and you're from New York. Oh, so Jane, tell me. So you use the name a couple of times, and then it starts to sink in. For me, I'm also a visual learner, so if I can write it down too, then it's definitely going to stick. Or it might be that the name reminds you of a song or somebody else, or you know, so you can use lots of little triggers that will help your brain to be able to keep that name to stick. And then suddenly you're no longer that person that can't remember people's names. You're now a person who remembers people's names. So having a system or a process to follow.
It's really good being on Zoom though, isn't it? And it just tells you everyone's name every time.
Certainly helps, yes. How are we going for time? I can't see the clock here.
It's 20 past.
20 after.
Thank you. So just speeding along then. So we're continuously editing our beliefs. We're looking at upgrading them and expanding our identity. And so as the evidence grew, so did my identity. He talks about how he became a writer. As the evidence grew, so did my identity as a writer. I didn't start out as a writer. I became one through my habits. So and Seth Godin talks about this, do the practice, do what it takes. If you want to become a writer, if you want to become, I love this example, I think it was in Tony Robbins' book actually. If you want to become a best-selling author, start with being an author.
Yeah.
Start with writing.
Yeah.
You don't get to become a best-selling author if you don't write. So you have to, the key they say to that is if you want to become a best-selling author, is write every day so that you become a person who writes. You are a writer. It's like, I don't win the lotto if I don't buy the lotto ticket. So each experience in your life modifies your self-image. So he says, decide the type of person you want to be, 2-step process. Step 2, prove it to yourself with small wins. Reinforce that belief. Each time you write a page, you're a writer. Each time you practice the violin, you're a musician. Each time you encourage your employees, you're a leader. So if you want to be a writer, ask, well, what kind of person is a writer? Well, it's someone who turns up and writes every day. All right, so that's really summarizing the link between habits and identity and how it's a loop, vice versa. Chapter 3 is how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. And he gives an example about cats and the research that they did. And it talks about the typical loop behind all human behavior is try, fail, learn, try differently. So if you want to ride a bike, you get on the bike, you try and ride, you fall off, you get back up. Was the old Japanese proverb, fall 7 times, get back up 8. We try and we fail at something and we learn how we failed and how we could do it better. So we try again. And if we keep trying, eventually we figure it out, or we could just ask someone else to show us, of course. That would be the smart way to do it, wouldn't it? But I always think about this example of teaching my son to ride a bicycle when he was a kid. He went from riding a bicycle with trainer wheels to one day we took the trainer wheels off and I was trying to get him to cycle across the yard without the trainer wheels, and I was sort of holding on to him and helping him to get going, and he kept sort of stumbling and falling, and I remember him sort of saying in frustration, "This is stupid, Dad, I'll never be able to ride a bike." And I was like, "Yes you will, son, just got to keep trying." And kept trying, and then suddenly he got it and off he went, and then next thing is he's doing bike tricks up and down the street and all sorts, you know. And it was just that persistence. And it really stuck with me, that, you know, that we do try things and we think, a lot of people will try it and then fail and go, that's it, I'm no good at that, I can't do it. But if you get back up and have another go, habits are simply reliable solutions to recurring problems in our environment. Reliable solutions. So he says, as habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. You lock in on the cues that predict success and tune out everything else. So your brain skips the process of trial and error and creates a mental rule. If this, then that. So habits are mental shortcuts learned from experience. You don't have to think anymore about how to tie your shoelace in the morning or how to brush your hair or clean your teeth. These are all things that you have developed as habits that now just are automatic, easy to do. So habits don't restrict your freedom, they create it. So really, he then talks about how the science of how habits work. 4 steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. So I'll just skip to there's a section right at the end of this chapter where he gives the great example. So problem phase. The cue is your phone buzzes with a new text message. The craving is you want to learn the contents of that message. Then you go into the solution phase, which is 3 is response. You grab your phone and read the text. 4 is the reward. You satisfy your craving to read the message. Grabbing your phone becomes associated with your phone buzzing. How hard is it to ignore your phone when it's buzzing? The ping of potentially a new Facebook message that you've just received, or a new message from a friend or something. There's a reward there, isn't there? Oh, somebody's liked my post. So this is why social media has become so powerful. In business, there's an email in your inbox. If you've got those alarms or those triggers that go, oh, you've got an email. So the problem phase is the cue is you're answering emails. The craving is you begin to feel stressed and overwhelmed by work. You want to feel in control. The response, you bite your nails. And the reward, you satisfy your craving to reduce stress. Biting your nails become associated with answering email. So how easily we can tie one thing to another. Now, this is a good one too. The problem phase. 1, the cue, you wake up. 2, the craving, you want to feel alert. So the solution phase. 3, the response, you drink a cup of coffee. And 4, the reward is you satisfy your craving to feel alert. So drinking coffee becomes associated with waking up. How many people do you hear say, oh, I can't do anything until I've had my coffee in the morning? You know, isn't that a common one?
Yes.
So that's the framework, is the 4 sort of stages of it, but every craving is linked to a desire to change your internal state. In other words, how we feel. So everything we do is about changing how we feel, and the response is the actual habit you perform, which can take the form of a thought or an action. The reward is the end goal of every habit. So the 4 laws of behavior change. This is really interesting. This is how you can either make it work or make it not work. So if you want to create a good habit, this is crucial. This is something we've all got to go away and practice this week, right? So you can write this one down if you haven't already. How to create a good habit. So the first law is the cue, remember? So how do we do that? We make it obvious. And he uses the example, if you want to play the guitar, you make it obvious by having the guitar somewhere where you're going to see it and walk past it. The second law, the craving, make it attractive. Make it fun, you know, make it something that you're going to want to do. The third law is the response. So make it easy. And the fourth law is the reward. So make it satisfying. So how to create a good habit is to make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So he then says you can invert these laws on how to break a bad habit. So the cue, instead of making it obvious, you make it invisible. So if you don't want to eat the biscuits, don't have them in the house to start with. But if you're going to have them in the house for guests or something, put them somewhere you don't look at them every day, so you're not walking past and going, oh, those biscuits are calling out to me. Make it unattractive. I suppose you could make the biscuits taste horrible, but that's not so good for the guests. But you could pick the biscuits that you don't particularly like.
You know what I would do with certain foods? I would imagine that they had ants crawling on them.
Very good. Yeah, that's something that we used in NLP, was to actually link an association with something like that. So, or to, yeah, if you're eating potato chips, to see all the fat dripping off them, you know, so you've got that mental image, so that when you go, oh, potato chip, oh no, fat dripping off, oh, horrible, yuck. So ants would be exactly the same, would work really well. So 3, make it difficult. You know, lock them in a box or something. So I love the example where James Clear talks about, he would get his secretary to change the pass key or the password on his internet, so he couldn't go checking his Facebook and all that until the weekend. She'd give him the new login on the weekend. So he took it out of his own hands and said, change this for me so I don't know the password, I can't get into it. So then he wouldn't waste his time on social media. The 4th law of the reward, make it, or sorry, the reward in how to break a bad habit is to make it unsatisfying. So in the good habit, we said, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. To break the bad habit, make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. I remember Tony Robbins talking about putting, and I did this, putting a little note. So if you've got chocolate in the house or biscuits in the house, you put a little note on top of, on the lid to that container saying, is the moment of joy you might experience from eating this going to make up for the lifetime of regret? You had to read that to open the lid to get the chocolate out. And it's very powerful, you know, because it does exactly what he's just saying here. It makes you stop and think, do I really want this? Is it because I'm trying to satisfy a short-term craving and getting the reward for that, but in the long term I'm not going to be very happy with myself, am I? Because then I get on the scales and then I put that weight back on, as the example. So if you want to change your behavior, that's your 4-step process. The simple set of rules that you can use in your favor to make it work, or to break a bad habit, use the opposite, use the inverse rules. Wow. So that's what we've covered there. Those first 3 chapters is the fundamentals, why tiny changes make a big difference. So any thoughts on anything that you want to change? Because this book is, you know, Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. What would
I
you
just
like?
am changing all the time. That's my mission at the moment, is changing. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So changing in lots of different areas in little ways.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any big change that you want to make?
Well, I'm changing who I am. So
That's a big change.
yeah.
Is it a good one?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Change.
I'm going to start living in colour. I feel like I lived in grey for a very long time.
Oh, that's an interesting statement.
Oh, I like that, Corley. Living in color.
Very good.
Yeah.
So how does that manifest itself? If you don't mind sharing a couple of little things.
Oh, ask the big questions about being happy with how I spend my time, and who I spend it with, and what we do. Just everything.
That's very good. So in terms of, if you don't mind me asking this, in terms of identity shift, you want to see yourself or feel that you are a more colorful person, or
yes,
how would you describe it?
happy, giving, helpful.
That's not to say that you aren't those things already. You want to be more that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I've always been helpful, but more inspiring.
Good. So what would that look like?
What would that look like?
Dancing on top of tables at a restaurant, or
Is that what you do,
No.
Jane?
no.
Is that what it would look like to you?
No.
No, I couldn't help but think that say that.
You'd have to look at someone dancing on a table in a restaurant and think, that's a happy person, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You might look
Outrageous.
a little crazy, but yeah.
Yeah.
Having fun. We've lost Stan. He's muted. Are we still there, Stan? Maybe you're not able to speak at the moment. And Yanni, we know, is driving. So Jane.
Well, for me, just like Corley said, like, I don't know, I have experience a little bit about coming from the heart and doing from the mind. From the mind, you kind of, it's limited. You have a lot of fears, a lot of regrets. And from the heart, everything goes smoothly. And I think everything starts with the daily habits, accepting that you can be more and allowing yourself to make those changes to have a better life. And anything from the heart, it kind of seems timeless. I don't know. I've been experiencing a lot of in the moment kind of action through the heart, and it seems timeless. It feels, I know it's amazing. And being able to do that with everything, when you eat, when you shower, when you drive, when you talk to somebody, when you're connecting with somebody, when you're trying to understand somebody, when you're working, just everything through heart. I think that is the habit I want to create, and I'm also teaching my baby for us to not use the word no, and being able to find ways to say it without using any negative connotation words, and in order for it to be a more flawless, high energy flow. That is a habit I would like to embody, as well with love.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Really well put. I think there's a lot of what people would refer to probably as mindfulness in there, of being conscious and aware of your choices and how you respond to things and how you look at things, being present, being in the moment, and making your response to something a conscious choice rather than possibly a negative reaction, or is not the ideal reaction that you'd like. So this being aware, being the observer of your own actions and your own behaviors. Really
yes, and it's so amazing. Like I've been every time I'm in a resistant kind of way or doing something, I just tell myself, feel it with the heart, take the emotion, just feel it. And I don't know, I feel my heart with like I could feel the energy coming from my heart. It's just oh my God. And it's just a little bit challenging or interesting that when I start thinking about it, it goes away, So it's like, oh, it's just like, okay, just be. Yeah, and I just tell her, let's just breathe in and breathe out.
There you go, out of the mouths of babes.
Absolutely.
Breathe in and breathe out. Simple as that, really, isn't it?
I love it. We're both learning just by listening, and she's taking a lot of information in, and she helps me in that way. When she feels my energy, she's like, Mom, just breathe in, breathe out. It's amazing.
Excellent.
That's fabulous.
So I'm just conscious of the fact that we've reached time now. Has anyone got any other thoughts they'd like to add, or anything that's occurred to them as we've gone through this first section this morning?
I just wanted to comment on, I'm enjoying this. But one of the things that occurred to me is that I'm kind of doing a little bit of a reverse than Corley and Yanni, in that I'm embracing my shadow side. I'm actually really looking at that part of me, the parts of me, the habits in me that I don't care for. And I'm finding that to be a real growth. And it's sort of, by doing that, I'm able to, it sort of takes away the power of things like fear. And it just takes the wind right out of it, you know.
I think it's interesting that in the picture you've got on the wall behind you, so you've got the woman in the moon. So you're focused on the dark side of the moon. What are the lessons from the dark side of the moon?
Yeah, and there really are lessons, because we develop a shadow side because of feeling inadequate, shame, or being blamed, or we blame ourselves, or the self-sabotage or whatever. Yep. And what's interesting is that, little did I know, probably about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, every email that goes out from me to anyone, I have a caption that says, when we make friends with our shadow side, we discover the infinite resource of our light. And it took me a long time to really make friends with it. It was simply an idea, or wouldn't that be nice? But it took me years, and now I feel like I'm very aware. I'm really in the moment a lot, and saying, oh, I feel a drop in the way I feel about, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, so what do I do what's my reaction? Where do I go? What foods do I eat when I'm angry or sad? What words do I say when and it's like, oh. So anyways,
I love that. So I just like to sort of summarize, because I'm very, very aware of the time, is that there's a great commonality there between you and Yanni and what you said, and Coralie as well. The great lesson in this is to be the observer of ourselves.
Yes.
To look for the clues of where we are either following the path to light, or where we are aware of the darkness, and both have lessons to teach us. So the challenge for this week, I think, going forwards, we'll aim to continue working on this book next week. I haven't looked to see how big these sections are, but it would make sense to cover the first law, which is chapters 4 to 7, because then you've got the complete first law in those areas, if you can manage that. Look, don't worry if you can't get it all done, because we will cover the ground anyway. But my point is that you've all made, and I just want to focus in on this, is for us this week, our challenge is to be the observer of ourselves, to look for where we see us heading towards the light, and the desired us that we want to be. And also, as James pointed out, looking at the dark side, what are the things that we want to change about ourselves? What are the things where we notice we're falling into this pattern, or we're repeating a reinforcement of a belief that's not really serving us? So that's the first step, isn't it? We talked about the alcoholic 12-step process. The first step is becoming aware of what or who we are and how that's manifesting. And the biggest clue to that is, you just said as well, is when it starts with I am this. So I am that I am is what Wayne Dyer said. When we notice where we're using the word I am, I'm hopeless with names, or I'm good at this, or I'm bad at that, they both have lessons, whether it's positive or negative. It's either empowering or disempowering us. So being the observer, look for those clues within ourselves and go, oh, what I just said there, did that really serve me? Even what I thought, you might not have said it out loud, but what you thought. When you catch yourself and reflect on, why did I do that? What behavior or what aspect of my identity was being reinforced by holding that belief or making that statement? And that will be a very interesting learning curve for the week. So that's what I would challenge you to do, and report back next week on anything that you observe on how it's impacted you in a way that can either empower you, or where it has been disempowering you, you can start to change that. This book's all about change, atomic habits leading to change, little changes that will bring big results. So we can all work on that together. So thank you everyone so much for your input this morning. It's been a great session.
Oh, it has. Wonderful.
Same time next week.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Can I, and this has nothing to do with what we're doing. AEST, like as
Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, right.
Which is about 3 hours ahead of Western Time, I think, at the moment. Does it stand 3 or 2? I can't remember. 3, I think.
3.
3. We're
3 hours.
WST, which is Australian Western Standard Time.
Okay. And so how do I know how that translates to like Greenwich Mean Time or Eastern Standard Time?
You can get yourself a little, there's a website you can go to called Time Buddy. My Time Buddy?
Time Body, B-O-D-Y? Or Buddy?
B-U.
Hang on.
Oh, Buddy, as in Buddy Pal?
Yeah.
Yep. So Time Converter, it's called worldtimebuddy.com.
World Time Buddy. Thank you. Because I
yeah, well, I check that for like checking what the Pacific Standard Time is and what that equates, because you've got to watch out because the clocks change around the world. So
right, exactly.
You wanted to
America goes back on the daylight savings time, or comes off daylight savings time in the second Sunday of March, and then the UK is different for Friday span in the week.
There you go. If you want to know the time, just ask Stan. So Stan, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Because you were missing from the end of that.
No, I had to take Cooper to school.
Okay. Oh,
and
good.
My tablet decided it wouldn't give me the keyboard so that I could write a message to say I was disappearing. But I didn't expect you guys to be still on when I go back again.
Right, well, we're heading off now. So so the challenge this week: be the observer of your own statements and beliefs and clues to your identity, and then that will be what you want to change as well.
And which chapters are we doing? We're
going to do the next chapters 4 to 7, which is called the first law. And if you don't get it all done, don't stress too much. We'll work through it anyway. But audiobook seems to be a good way of catching up if you're struggling with the actual reading.
It is.
Audio while you're doing something else.
Now I'm reading extra books and reading multiple, listening to multiple books. I need like 400 days to get through the book.
So Stan, is that a problem, or is that a good thing that you're filling your head with so much knowledge?
I'm going to, I'm addicted to books anonymous soon.
There we go. There it is. I'm addicted to. Well, that's a good addiction, I think. That's just my view on it. But
and then I'll have to also go to. I'm addicted to audiobooks and I'm addicted to webinars. I'm addicted to masterminds. There's all these things to go to.
The next thing is, are you applying the knowledge you're learning from them? That's the key. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks, Tony. To everybody.